What's going on, Black people? My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins. Today is a sad day. RIP to the one and only Earl Simmons, aka DMX. Today on drboycetv.com, I'm going to actually break down the life of DMX in a way that's different from mainstream media. Mainstream media is going to make the conversation about DMX's life simple, but that's not how we do this on the platform for intelligent Black people. So if you want a unique one and only perspective on DMX, as we break this down, I'm going to do a eulogy for my brother actually, and give you his life story. These are the things that you won't hear on mainstream media. I'm also bringing in Michael Dothard, founder. He's a Black man. He's a founder and CEO of According to Hip Hop. And we're also going to talk about DMX, and Michael is going to bring his expertise in, and we're going to eulogize DMX and aka Earl Simmons in a way that I think is appropriate and proper for us to not only understand him, but to also become better people. Now, give me a yes and no in the chat if you can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I want to make sure my mic and everything's coming through all right. Give me a yes in the chat if you're able to hear me okay. So I'm gonna look for the yes. And when I get the yes, then I'll know that I'm coming through all right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Give me a yes. Okay. All right. So it looks okay. Some yeses are coming through. Good. All right. So let's get started. We're going to talk today. The topic of conversation is DMX. And we're going to begin on drboycetv.com. Buckle up your seatbelt, hit the thumbs up button. We're going to get started right now.
Here we are, clan the isms, cataclysm, great. Our people out here struggling, trying to make it in this state. Everybody out here doing it, but we the ones too late. Now family, we the ones who gotta delegate. Get that money in the power, never be fake. Stick to cosign for 3. What did he say? Create jobs, support our own. Educate the same and buy back your home. Got 3 degrees, triple 10. 3 PhDs, now we on the CNN. DBTV, let's talk about negligence. Ignorance is bliss, but we can turn it to intelligence. Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see. Let's break it down here on Dr. Boyce TV. Here we are.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. RIP to the one and only DMX. We are going to talk about my brother in a way that is respectful and leaves him a dignified legacy. Y'all know me. I'm not really here to just gossip about what the obvious things are. I like to look beneath the surface. I like to understand what's happening with our brothers, what's happening with our community. I'm a big fan of hip hop, and I'm a big believer in all of us learning from what we see, and also just making sure we explore the human side of everything. So I see John is mentioning actually something interesting that I saw about the vaccination and that being connected with DMX. And I don't know anything about that one way or the other, but we also know the obvious challenges that the brother had. And so I will refrain from sharing every perspective because I mentioned that before. I went on Hip Hop Uncensored and kind of gave more of a raw point of view. I just hate drugs. I think drugs are such a terrible thing for Black people. And even if DMX didn't pass from the drugs, the fact that he even had to deal with that kind of hell is just sad to me. I think one of his albums was called Hell is Hot, or so dark. It's dark and hell is hot. I don't know if anybody remembers that album from '98. Give me a yes in the chat if you remember one of DMX's albums called It's Dark and Hell is Hot. And if you recall, DMX wrote a lot about hell. He talked a lot about prayer. He talked a lot about God. And so he was a spiritual man. He also was a person who was living in hell. And so whether the drugs took him out or not, I don't know. I don't know if he fits in that category. It's not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's gone. Whether the drugs was the culprit or not, we know that this brother lived in hell because he was on his pathway to become the hottest rapper of all time. There was nobody like DMX. I mean, if you remember when DMX came out, there was nothing like DMX. He was better than Jay-Z. I remember when Alicia and I were riding to New York a lot of years ago. Like we just decided to get in the car from Chicago and take a trip to New York, and we were sitting in the car. We were in our 20s at the time, and that song. Remember, money, cash, hoes, money, cash, hoes, right? Like hip hop been ratchet for a minute, right? And it was like, and we were just rapping like money, cash, hoes, money, cash, hoes. What? Money, cash, hoes, money. So anyway, let me just stop. All right, so let's so RIP to DMX. What I wanted to do was also eulogize him by kind of sharing some stuff that is publicly available information, but the media doesn't really cover this type of thing. And so first thing I want to do is I'll just read straight off his Wikipedia page and give you guys background. I don't know how many of you, a little DMX trivia, give me a yes or no. How many of you know what DMX stands for? What does DMX stand for? How many of you know? Give me a yes or no if you even know what DMX actually means. What does DMX stand for? Where did that name come from? Let me see. I'm looking to see in the chat if anybody knows what DMX stands for. So speak about the good that he has done. We already know about his disease of addiction. Absolutely. And even the disease of addiction doesn't mean he did something bad. But it is something that has to be talked about in the Black community because they really messed up your whole community with drugs. Dark Man X. There you go. Dark Man X. He was born December 18th, 1970. His debut album was called It's Dark and Hell is Hot in 1998. He sold 251,000 copies of the album in the first week of the release, which is big numbers. And then he released then in 1999, he released And Then There Was X, which included the hit single Party Up. His 2003 singles Where the Hood At and X Gonna Give It To You were also some of his most popular. Some quick demographic stats on DMX. Let's see here. His labels were Def Jam, Rough Riders, Columbia Records, Bloodline Hypnotic, and Cleopatra Records. Associated acts that are associated with him are Murder Inc., Rough Riders, Dame Grease, and Switz Beats. DMX was featured in films such as Belly, Romeo Must Die, Exit Wounds, Cradle to the Grave, and Last Hour. In 2006, he starred in the reality TV series DMX Soul of a Man, which was primarily aired on the BET network. He published a book of his memoirs entitled Earl, the Autobiography of DMX. His early life. He was born in Mount Vernon, New York on December 18th, 1970, the son of 19-year-old Arnett Simmons and 18-year-old Joe Barker, and was raised in Yonkers. He has no middle name. He was simply named Earl at birth. Earl was the second child of Annette, who had given birth to a daughter, Bonita, 2 years earlier, as well as one daughter, Shayla, and two stillborn sons after Earl. Barker did not want Simmons to keep her son, and he cut off almost all contact with the family as soon as Earl was born. So this is starting off as a typical Black story. When I think about my own life, my mother was, DMX's mother was 19, my mother was 17. DMX's father left his life as soon as he was born. My father left my life as soon as I was born. And anybody out here who speaks that nonsense about fathers not being important can kiss my entire Black ass, because we know that fathers matter. Black fathers matter. Put that hashtag in the chat right now if you agree with me that Black fathers matter. I believe that if this brother who was actually DMX's father had been coached or counseled or somehow mentored properly by an OG, by another man. Remember, trauma begots trauma. So I doubt his father had a father. His father probably didn't have a man to say, no, son, you don't do that. That's your offspring. You do not let him go through this life by himself, because if you do, bad things will happen to him. People will get a hold of him. People will take him down pathways he shouldn't go. And so that's the first thing that I picked up on, that Black fathers matter. Stop letting people tell you that a mama can be a daddy, because that is not true. Ladies in the room, all the ladies in the room who don't have testicles, raise your hand. Every woman in the room, give me a yes in the chat. If you don't have testicles and you don't ever plan on getting a sex change, raise your hand. Say yes in the chat. The reason I say that is because it takes a man to raise a man. It takes a man to raise a man. And DMX was a man. But you know, that guidance of manhood is very, very important, especially when you're talking about a man like DMX who had access to everything he wanted in the world. He had access to everything. And if you think about this, right, you had, Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods had his father keeping him on the straight and narrow. And when Tiger's daddy died, that's when Tiger got off into all kinds of crazy stuff, right? And so basically, this is not just true for human beings. This is actually true for animals. I don't know if y'all know this, but they found in a wildlife reserve when the elephants didn't have fathers, they would go off and just get into stuff. They would join gangs and they would just end up in crazy situations, because even for elephants, fathers matter. If you go to the south side of Chicago, where you got 16-year-old kids running around with AK-47s taking each other out, it's because you don't have fathers. So when they wanted to destroy the black community, the first thing they did was they said, let's get rid of the fathers. Let's get rid of the protectors. Let's get rid of the leaders. Let's get rid of the OGs, and then we'll watch that whole community crumble. And then we'll convince the people in that community that the fathers don't matter. So right there from the jump, DMX's life was tragically affected by the fact that his daddy wasn't taught to do his job. You know, when you talk about football coaches, I remember Nick Saban was coaching Alabama or whatever. I can't remember one of the teams, and he kept telling the players, do your job, do your job. So what a dad does to a son is he says, boy, do your damn job. So I hate the fact that the father wasn't there. I believe personally that made a big difference. I told you guys, when I talk about the life of DMX, I'm not going to just give you what media gives you and like, oh, whoa, is it? Here's his music. Let's listen to the music. You can do that. Go do that. But here, we're trying to build a community, man. This is what matters. So let me read more about the life of DMX. Please hit the thumbs up button, hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button if you haven't done it yet. As a child, Simmons suffered greatly from bronchial asthma, being taken to the emergency room almost nightly due to him waking up unable to breathe. He was brought up in the Jehovah's Witnesses faith. That's where his deep spirituality comes from. He was a Jehovah's Witness. At some point in his childhood, Simmons was hit by a drunk driver while crossing the street and suffered minor injuries. He claims his family could have received as much as $10,000 in a legal settlement, but his mother refused to open the case as she claimed it went against her faith. Simmons went through a disjointed childhood that included being beaten by his mother and her various boyfriends so badly that he lost teeth and sustained numerous bruises and cuts on his face. So you see what happens when the daddy ain't there and the mama got boyfriends coming through? That's where child abuse occurs. I can tell you, I know a lot of cops. My daddy was a cop. I know a lot of cops, and everybody in here who knows what I'm talking about, please verify this if you have any experience in this arena. What every cop will tell you is that a lot of child abuse happens because the father's not there to protect the child. Actually, again, connecting it to animals. This is not just true for humans, it's true for animals. Animals have something called I believe it's called infanticide, where for like bears or lions, if you have a child, if a lion or bear meets a woman that has a child with another man, a lot of times that bear will literally eat that baby or kill that baby. And then just say, this ain't my child, so I don't give a damn about it. So nobody protects a child the way the father does. The fathers matter, ladies. I'm telling you, like, you know, and for men too, like, you know, you got to be there. So his father wasn't there. So this brother's getting beat up every day. And again, that's another thing DMX and I have in common. I'm not speaking ill on my stepfather. I got lucky. I had a stepfather who stepped in as a real man. He struggled with drugs just like DMX did, but he walked away from the dope. But he had some PTSD from Vietnam. And believe me, in that house, the hell was hot in my household. That's all I got to say is that I remember getting punched in the face a few times. I also know that feeling, right? And I can tell you also like this, that my father should have been the man there protecting me, but he wasn't. I got lucky. I had a good man there, but he wasn't a perfect man. And when he was young, and I'm young, and things happen or whatever, and you have that conflict, things occur that can be very traumatic. Okay, so if you have a child, do everything you can. Learn how to manage your damn relationships. Like, figure it out, man. Like, there's experts out there that can help you. Why do you think, like this weekend, for example, in the Black Business School, we are doing this thing called the Black Love Weekend. And people think, and it starts tomorrow and it's totally free. You can go right there on that URL and sign up. Well, why are we doing the Black Love Weekend? Well, it's because maintaining your relationships makes all the difference. Yesterday, I talked to a Black woman who she and her husband made $6 million in their business. They went from making $35,000 a year to then making $1 million to now making $6 million a year. She's 29 or 30 years old. She's very young. And her name was Kim Lewis. She runs Curl Mix. And Kim, I said, Kim, if you had not had a good relationship with your husband, do you think that you could have taking care of those two kids and built this business at the same level? She said, absolutely not. She said it would have went from prosperity to complete struggle. So what you want to do is think about your relationships like the biggest investment you'll ever make. Protect your relationship because you're also protecting your children. You're protecting your prosperity. You're protecting your opportunity, all of this. So as you read about the life of DMX, and again, I this is making me emotional because I know what it's like to get beat up by a man who ain't your daddy. I've gone through that. And I see a pattern here. I see a pattern, and it happens in so many of our households. A lot of you know this. In fact, a lot of times there's a natural conflict between the oldest boy and that stepfather. When that man comes in the house and he don't know that man and that's not his daddy, then men are funny. Men, we get territorial. You know, the young guy bucks up on the old guy. Next thing you know, you have the movie Baby Boy. The movie Baby Boy, ladies, it tells you everything you need to know about how the men in your house are engaged with each other when you're not looking. You remember when the lady would walk out the room, they be sitting there smiling like everything's okay. Then as soon as she walked out, he's got him in the chokehold, like, I'll beat your ass. Like, this is what happens. So that's why I tell you, ladies, if you want to protect your sons, try to keep that son around his father. Don't have random ass men running through the house. And God, only Lord knows what happens with a lot of these daughters. You know, I'm not going to go into that. I just hope you hear me. I hope you hear me. People going to just be hating whatever. Just shut up with your stupid self. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button. Let me read more to you. So Earl Simmons, aka DMX, he went through a disjointed childhood. He lost a lot of teeth because he was beaten so bad by his mother's boyfriends. When he was 5 years old, his family settled in Yonkers. At the end of the 5th grade, Simmons was kicked out of school and sent to the Julia Dickman Andrus Children's Home for 18 months. So he's having trouble in school because he's having trouble at home. That happens to a lot of young men when they don't have the daddy. School is like an afterthought. I had trouble in school because I wasn't happy at home. I was in school getting put in detention every week, arguing with the teachers or whatever. Like this is a common story. A lot of you probably have the same story. So anyway, let me keep reading. Simmons began wandering the streets of Yonkers to escape his mother's abuse, and eventually found, now mind you, it's funny, right? His mom was a Jehovah's Witness, but she's beating the hell out of a child. Y'all religious people out here beating the hell out of your kids and abusing them. I mean, I can't reconcile that. That makes no sense to me. No disrespect to anybody that's, that's deep in the faith. But my God, how can you beat the hell out of your kid and then talking about I'm praying to God at the same time? That don't even make no damn sense. All right, so Simmons began wandering the streets of Yonkers to escape his mother's abuse and eventually found comfort in befriending stray dogs that walk the streets at night. Alicia's not in here. She's a therapist, but I'd be willing to bet you that his connection to stray dogs was a reflection of how he felt inside. In his own life, if you listen, DMX in his music, he would bark like "Urf, urf," because he had that big, strong voice. He identified with dogs, and I wouldn't be surprised. I wish Alicia was here so she could verify this, because I'm only an armchair therapist, but I would be willing to bet you that he identified with the stray dogs who were unloved because he himself felt like a stray dog who was unloved. And I understand that too. I identify with children who are hurting because I was a child that hurt. I remember hurting and being sad and feeling like nobody loved me. And when a child feels like that, it breaks my heart. I'll do anything for a child like that. So I think that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm seeing. I'm only speculating here. I did not know DMX in life, but I'm just reading and kind of sharing my thoughts honestly as I'm reading this. I told you guys, I'm not doing what CNN and all of them are doing. I want to do something different. This B1. Okay. Shortly after he began doing this, his mother again sent him to a boys' home. During his stay at the boys' home, again, so he's away from the family, away from his daddy. That's when he meets the person that will ruin his life. Simmons bonded with other students from New York over their shared love of hip hop. After performing for his friends, they encouraged him to write music to the behest of his teacher. When he returned home, Simmons met Reddy Ron, a local rapper who impressed with Simmons' beatboxing skills, asked him to become his partner. Simmons chose the name DMX, which came from an instrument he had used at the boys' home, the Oberheim DMX drum machine. It was later also interpreted as Darkman X. So he used this drum machine in band or at school. He identifies in music. Which makes sense. He's a very spiritual man, so he's feeling a lot of pain. When you are in pain, your emotions connect to the music. So it doesn't surprise me that DMX became an artist, because he comes off as a guy that's deep and emotional. Reddy Ron, as you know, is a guy that introduced him to the drugs that would kill him. And that really also speaks to the importance of the mentor and the role model. And when you don't do the job right, you can ruin somebody's life. But when you do the job right, you can make somebody's life much better. So again, as I talk about the challenges that I went through from my father and the mistakes he made with me when I was a kid, he's apologized for that, by the way, and I've forgiven him for that. Forgiveness is a powerful weapon against that inner pain. Whatever's pissing you off, whatever's hurting you, whatever you're mad about from 10, 15 years ago, I encourage you to learn the power of forgiveness. business, because when you are carrying around all that weight, all that burden, all that sadness, all that anger, you're only killing yourself. You're only harming yourself. Black people have more health issues than anybody else because we got so much shit we carrying inside of us. So what I encourage you to do is find a process that will allow you to forgive. I forgave my father. He apologized to me. And he also, on the flip side, to compensate for the mistakes he made, he was the best mentor, best role model I ever had. I wouldn't be here as the man I am with you right now if it wasn't for that man. So when he talks about heaven and hell and love and pain and the going back and forth, pleasure and pain and love and hate and all that, that was my experience with my dad. It was like love and hate. It was pleasure and pain. It was heaven and hell. And for the last 30 years, we've had heaven. That's why I can talk about what happened way back then without being angry about it. Let go of that anger. Learn how to forgive. So DMX, he was a Christian. He stated that he read the Bible every day. Again, very spiritual. While in prison, DMX stated that he had a purpose for being there. Quote, "I came here to meet somebody. Don't know who it was, but I'll know when I see him. I came here to give him a message, and that message is Jesus loves them." DMX was a transitional deacon in the Christian church and aspired to become ordained as a pastor, stating that he received his call in 2012. So he's constantly trying to find himself. DMX was the father of 15 children. He married his childhood friend Earl Simmons in 1999. They were married for 11 years. They had 4 children: Xavier, Tacoma, Praise, Mariella, and Sean. In July 2010, after his first of 3 incarcerations that year, Tashira announced their separation. DMX maintained that the two remained friends. His 15th child, Exodus Simmons, was born to his girlfriend, Desiree Lindstrom, on August 16, 2016. So he's left a great legacy. A lot of children owe their life to the fact that their father helped create them, right? The mother obviously is very important, but I think that that's a beautiful thing, because now you're talking about a fresh start. Now they get the opportunity to do what I had to do, which was you learn from the mistakes of people that were before you. My father, I told you, my stepfather struggled with drugs, had a heroin addiction when he came home from Vietnam. He kicked it. He walked away from it. God bless him. And also my biological father struggled with drugs. He went to prison for drugs, and he died. He died maybe about 2-3 years ago. I didn't know the man very well. I didn't know him enough to hate him or like him. I didn't know him. And the thing that I can tell you is that I learned a lot from the lives of those men. I sat there and I heard my father tell me what drugs will do to you and why you need to stay away from it. And I learned from that. I saw what my biological father went through because of drugs. But drugs and alcohol were kind of everywhere, right? And that's why I think as Black people, we have to make sure that we are real clear about how we deal with that dope. They planted that dope in there to distract you. They wanted to kill your potential. You lost probably $10 trillion worth of wealth because of all the great things that could have happened that didn't happen because somebody was chasing the dope instead of chasing the dream. DMX could have been a billionaire, but instead of becoming a billionaire, he had a big struggle in his career. So now he's got this legacy, right? He's got these 16 kids that can learn from his life. They have a lot to be proud of. They can listen to their dad's music. Their dad's music was the best. There's no artist that I can think of anywhere in hip hop history that had the impact DMX had in the first year or two of his career. He became like an instant legend. Like Jay-Z took time. He had to trial and error and kind of rise up the ladder. DMX was at the top of the pile within a month of being released. He was that unique and that special. So God bless him for that. DMX had multiple extramarital affairs, some of which produced children. DNA testing confirmed that he was, I'm reading right here from the Wikipedia, confirmed that he was the father of at least 2 children. The first was born to Maryland resident Monique Wayne in 2004. The second to a different woman in late 2008. DMX and Wayne fought over her claim that he was the father of her son, during which she had sued him repeatedly for defamation of character and for child support. After DNA testing proved DMX fathered Wayne's son in 2007, he was ordered to pay her $1.5 million. DMX in 2013 filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, citing his child support obligations as his primary claim. The filing was challenged by the Department of Justice Bankruptcy Watchdog Trustee Program, which was later dismissed by the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Manhattan in November 11, 2013. Now, this just a little tidbit, little thought, little quick note. For the brothers out here, child support is the number one reason a lot of brothers go broke. I'm not telling you what to do. I am telling you, though, again, the reason that we're doing stuff like the Black Love Weekend is because a man that is able to keep his relationship straight is better able to get things done. Like you got a good marriage with a good woman, or at least a good relationship with a good woman, and a good relationship with your kids, where that benefits you is, number one, your woman becomes your number one asset. Like Alicia and I work together on stuff all the time. We go out and get money together. We buy real estate together, right? It would be hard to do if we were sitting there fighting over nonsense, right? So we get help in order to make sure that we can communicate properly and get along. Secondly, if you have children and you raise them right, your children become the first assets in the business. They want to jump in the family business, and that becomes good labor that you can access at a relatively low cost, but you're teaching them the game. You're passing them a legacy. They're earning their way up the ladder so that when you go on, you can pass it off to your teammates, which are your kids, and then you can actually grow and become something great even after you're gone. And that's important because you think about it. When I look at the life of DMX, I see a guy who was I bet you that most people that know him would probably say that he was a good guy. Like, I really believe he was a good guy. It sounds to me like he was a good guy. I don't know anybody that knows him, but it sounds like he had a side of him that was a very good person. He even his ex-wife says, "Oh, we're still friends." And I think that really speaks to the fact that he was a person that was a little bit of a lost soul. Again, the identification with the stray dogs. I'm only speculating here. I could be wrong, but also if you think about it, most of his music, he had the Rough Riders, and they kind of rolled like a group, like a gang. And why is that important? Well, just yesterday I was talking to Sugar T, who was E40's sister, and she's going to come on the platform. She's a very smart lady. And I remember Sugar T from this song called Sprinkle Me. And in that thing, it was E40 and his sister, and they had, I think, a couple cousins rapping, and we're the Clique. They called themselves the Clique. And that's family, right? So same thing with the Rough Riders, like that's family. So I feel like with DMX, what I'm hearing is that this is a man who has such a terrible home life that he spent a lot of his life looking for family, right? His music was very group family oriented. And I think that was a reflection of his spirit, that he was a spiritual person connected to God, had gone through heaven and hell, love and hate, pleasure and pain, but also he was a person that seemed to connect with other people in a way where that was reflected in his music. So anyway, DMX released so this is so he had a feud with Ja Rule. I'm not gonna read about that. You can look that up. He spoke openly about his addiction to crack which began when he was 14. In February 10th, 2016, he was found unresponsive. Okay, blah, blah, blah. We know about that. All right. And then there's more about legal issues and all that. I'm not really going to read all that because I'm not here to kick a man's grave, when he just passed. I'll just say that if you read the legal section, there's a lot of stuff here. And actually, Michael Dothard should be coming in a second, and I'm going to get his point of view. Michael is a hip hop head. He runs According to Hip Hop. And we're going to kind of break it down and talk about the for real of all of this. So, by the way, do me a favor. If you could, please hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button. If you want to support the platform, we have a Patreon at intelligentblackpeople.com. That's right there on the screen. And I'm going to look at some of your comments. White supremacy is insidious, says Lionel Clements. I agree with you. I think white supremacy is written all over this. White supremacy, if you think about this, right? When DMX was born, he was born in 1970, and this was New York, right when they started putting all the heroin and the crack and everything else right in our communities. And so that family was very different in 1970 than it would have been, say, 10, 20 years earlier. If he'd been born in 1960 or 1950, his outcomes probably would have been very different because there was a very different reality in New York at that time. And so with X, I see a guy that was literally so kicked around by life at an early age that I don't even know if this brother had a chance. I really don't. If I'd known him as a grown up, I would have. And if he'd listened to me, I would have said, "Hey, man, let's get you some counsel and let's get you some therapy." But the problem, though, is that when you mess up kids at an early age, it's hard to come back from that. Smoking crack at 14. Oh my God, but that wasn't even the first time that an adult that he trusted harmed him or abused him. The first abuser he had was his father, who abandoned him. Then the second abuser he had was his mother, who beat the hell out of him and kicked him out the house and threw him in the street. Then the next abuser, Lord, God knows what happened when he was in that boys' home. Because boys' homes are terrible places where damaged kids do horrible things to damage other children. And then you meet your mentor. You're looking for family, right? You're looking to connect to things. And your mentor, Reddy Ron, says, "Here, smoke this," right? And it's just, and he could have said, here, read this, right? He could have did what Elijah Muhammad or what Malcolm X's friend in prison did. He said, here, brother, read this, right? But instead he said, here, smoke this. So the difference between saying smoke this versus saying, here, read this is literally two forks in the road. That's a huge fork in the road when it comes to life. So when you are mentoring young black men, please, everybody type the word in the chat, say, read this. I want you to go to a young black man somewhere. Again, don't just cry about the life of DMX. I mean, it's sad. It's very sad for sure. But instead of being sad about it, let's build from it. Go and find a young black man, find a book that you enjoy, and give that book to the young black man as a gift and say, here, man, here, brother, read this. They may never read it, but at least they're hearing from an older adult that they trust to tell them to read something as opposed to smoke something. That's a clear and deliberate choice. That decision to say read this versus smoke this makes all the difference in the world. I know guys who grew up, like Malcolm X, who were troubled all over the place, and somebody said, here, read this, and they read the book. They say, oh my God, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. It changed my life. And then I know guys who were 15 years old. Somebody said, here, man, smoke this. Next thing you know, 30 years later, they're hooked. I knew a guy, and I'm gonna bring Michael Dothard in 1 second because I'm gonna tell you the story. I knew a kid. True story, who went on tour when he was a really good singer in the church. He was also spiritual, and in the church, he was such a good singer that how they like to go scoop up and exploit black talent that they find in the church. They found Whitney Houston in the church, and they probably should have let her stay in the church, but instead of staying where she was at, she goes to Hollywood, living the dream, which turned into a nightmare. We know what happened with Whitney and Whitney's daughter and Bobby and Bobby's son and Whitney's daughter's boyfriend, right? Drugs. But here's the deal. So this kid goes, they scoop him up, Hollywood, weird, terrible place with really messed up people who want to scoop up your kids and ruin them, making them think that they're doing well, but really you're not. And so he goes out to LA. True story. He goes on tour with a famous group. I'm not even going to say the name of the group because I know people now, and I guess I know people who know people. So I'm not trying to point anybody out. But he goes on tour with this group. And during the tour, when he's 15 years old, he walks in the room. Now his mother is like, oh, my baby is famous. My baby is, singing and blah, blah. He walks in the room and there's a bunch of guys sitting around a table that are, getting high, snorting some white powder. And he walks in, he's like, what are y'all doing? And instead of saying, get out of here, man, you ain't ready for this, right? You know what they did? They said, here, try it. And he tried it. Of course, at 15, it's the greatest thing that ever happened. It's the best feeling in the world. And guess what? 25 years later, he's getting locked up. I saw him. I knew him very well. I saw him at an event, and he's like, yeah, I went to jail for the drugs, and he's a drug addict 25 years later, by the way, because of what these so-called mentors did. And he's like, yeah, I'm done with it though. I'm done with it. I'm like, so how did you, what did you do? Like, how did you get off? He's like, man, I've just been praying to God, and God's gonna get me off the drugs. I'm like, man, brother, please don't do that. And then I said, well, what type of rehab did you get? And he said, you know what my rehab was? I said, what was it? He said, I got on my knees and asked God to release me from the drugs. And that's what God did. I said, oh my God, man, this dude's literally, I kid you not, 1 week later, he gets locked up, robbing a gas station because the appetite for the coke was that strong. Like literally. So what I'm saying to you right now, black people, and I'm bringing Michael in now, is think very carefully about everything you say to a young person, everything you do with a young person, everything you expose a young person to, because the littlest things will make all the difference in the world. So if you want to know why I'm on here every damn day, running my mouth, being called an idiot, being attacked, having darts thrown in my head, and I give zero fucks about that, is because I'm sitting here looking for all the young people, all the lost souls, all the young guys who are getting bad advice, and young women who need a uncle, Boyce, a father, whatever the hell I can be for you. I'm trying to be there for you because I believe that if my voice is in your brain, that I can be one of those voices where you say, okay, I think this is something that's going to make my life better instead of this other nonsense is going to make my life worse. That's what we owe our young people, period. Now, Michael, I'm bringing you in. I don't know if you can hear me, brother. Can you hear me?
I hear you very well.
All right.
You hear me?
Michael Dothard, he's in here. How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. How you doing? Considering, rest in peace to DMX.
Yeah. That's pretty solemn, man. It's sad, and I didn't mean to keep going. I got into. I got the Holy Spirit, man, because this thing affected me, man. I know for you, I mean, you are like one of the most like profound hip hop minds in the country. Because according to hip hop, I watched you build that platform up to hundreds of thousands of followers, and then Facebook came and took the page down, and then you just started again from scratch and built it back up to like this massive platform. So let's start with just asking about the DMX thing, because I know there's a lot of stuff we could talk about.
Right.
Give us some thoughts on DMX and in terms of what's going through your mind and how you're feeling about all of this.
Well, definitely. I mean, appreciate you having us on the show, by the way. And I was talking to my co-host Ahmad. We're actually going to do like a whole life and times of DMX tonight on our show. And, he brought up a really good point. And obviously DMX was game changing when it comes to the time period that he came in. This was after Tupac, Biggie had just passed. Everything had gotten all shiny suit and all that. And this guy came in and really brought some rawness back to the game with It's Dark and Hell is Hot. But one of the things that Ahmad brought up, which I thought was very interesting, is the fact that DMX didn't really get put on, or at least didn't put out his first solo debut album till he was like 28 years old, or at least going on 28. And so, in hip hop, that really didn't happen, especially in that period. You had like these 19, 20, 21-year-old people dropping their debut albums before they had even found themselves. So his debut album already had a level of maturity, and he had already done a lot of living by the time that, he actually was able to bring forth his first efforts to the masses.
Wow.
That's what kind of really made him different.
Wow. Well, I thought that it was like, I remember his voice. That's what stood out to me. Like he just had, it's like a male version of like what maybe a Sade kind of brings as a singer. Like there is no other Sade. Like there is no other DMX. Like,
there's a lot of pain in that voice too, and that comes with a lot of living, and real life experiences. And I know you were kind of covering some of the stuff beforehand about his upbringing and him being abandoned and abused by his mother and all those things when he was a teenager. And it's just he lived a really rough life, but he was able to actually put that into the music and hopefully help people, who were going through similar things, or for them to avoid certain things, just based on how he lived. And I know you probably brought up his mentor and all that too, where, got him addicted to drugs. Unfortunately, like the music industry is not the best place for people who have those type of vices. Mm-hmm. And, and not to put any kind of blame on anybody, but you could even see with his peers, like what kind of help was he getting through this whole process? I mean, we've seen him go through this for 20-something years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the question I would ask too is, it's hard to imagine that there weren't people that came along and said, "Hey, man, I really want to help you." He's probably had interventions, stuff like that. Like you remember, even Amy Winehouse, when she had her struggles, she made a whole song like they're trying to make me go to rehab, and I say no. It was a great song, but kind of sad at the same time. Like damn,
they're crying for help.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I think the question I would ask is, when you're fame can almost be like a curse. It seems like because it can make you stop listening to the people you need to listen to. Right, because you're surrounded by yes men and yes women who think everything you do is perfect, and they don't really give a damn about you.
They don't want to upset you. You're the cash cow, so they don't want to do anything that's going to disrupt that.
Yeah, and then maybe, and what's interesting is even when they don't even see you as a cash cow, it's just like because you're a celebrity, you're perfect. Right.
That too. A lot of people are in denial with the struggles of people who they look up to.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder. I would be stunned if there were not people who tried to help along the way. Yeah. And I wonder what happened. Like, I'd like to hear from some of those people, as opposed to us making the assumption that nobody helped and everybody just was out for money. I believe that human beings are better than that. I think that he probably had some people around him that were like, come on, man, you had something great. Like you see that when I compare him to in terms of talent, he's up there with some of the greats that didn't quite like do what we thought they were going to do long term. Yeah. Lauryn Hill, I think about that, and I think about Mike Tyson. You know,
right.
and I believe that, and Mike will talk about people that tried to help him. He just wasn't listening. You know, well, so what are your thoughts about it? I mean, how do you even approach somebody who's on top of the world, who can't do no wrong? They can always go listen to somebody else, but you have a message for them that they need to hear. Like, in fact, I'll give you an example now. I'd like to hear your answer on that. When Richard Pryor was going through his stuff, Jim Brown, who, you know, real man, Jim Brown went to go live with him and was like, "We're gonna get you off this dope," and Richard Pryor started avoiding him. So what do you?
I'm sure there's a lot of those stories that we never hear. I mean, I know even D&Y over at Rough Riders, they were saying that they would make sure that the drug dealers didn't, you know, mess with X or didn't deal to X rather. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, with this industry, the music industry, who's to say that there aren't people who are on the opposite side of that, trying to make sure that their artists stay doped up. And, you know, you hear those stories too, you know, bad contracts and things of that nature. It's like, how do you get somebody to sign some of these contracts? They have to kind of be not in their best mind, you know?
Now that is true. Now that is true. Yeah, man. I mean, I think, you know, like I really believe that people that want you to fail do not want you to be alert. You know, they want you unconscious. We know that that's true of white supremacy. They'll distract you with stupid stuff. They do it to athletes and entertainers all the time. Distract them. They do it with the booty and the bling. I think when Ice Cube and NWA were Jerry Heller tried to get him to sign that terrible contract, I think he put a big check for like $80,000 in front of them. And the mindset was like, these are kids from the hood. 80 grand is that's more money they've ever had in their life. And he's seeing that they could be worth $500 million. And he's like, I can get them to lock in for life for 80,000. And Ice Cube was the only one who was like, no, I'm not signing this.
Yeah.
You know? So what do you think about that in terms of just awareness? Because so many exploitation stories occur within entertainment, and it's from people outside our community. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that kind of rewinds back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that DMX actually got on when he was 28 years old. So they prey on the young, impressionable, and desperate. You come from a poor community, you're young, and like you said, you wave that check that they've never seen in their life. And at that point, you're locked in, and, you know, 10, 15 years later, you're wondering why you can't have any kind of ownership of your early recordings. It's like you're used up for your best pieces of work or your most energetic pieces of work, and you can't get them back. I mean, we're even seeing, you know, Anita Baker deal with her, you know, trying to buy back her masters 30 years later. And she's telling people not to stream or buy her music because the label or the people who own her masters are refusing to sell it back to her like they agreed that they would.
Wow.
So, you know, you prey on the young and impressionable, and, you know, that I think that's what you end up getting in those situations.
Yeah, man. Well, you know, and by the way, everybody, I'm talking to Michael Dothard. He's the, are you the founder or co-founder of According to Hip Hop?
Co-founder with Maurice and Ron Young, but I am the owner of According to Hip Hop.
Okay, and your website is according to hip-hop.com?
Yep, according the number 2 hip-hop.com.
Okay, and so everybody, I'm gonna put the URL on the screen so everybody can go take a look. So you, what is it that made you dedicate your life to hip hop? Like, how did that happen?
Well, it was a love thing, you know. It's like, you know, you love the culture, you love the music, and originally I was working in radio, and you start seeing the politics of the game and things like that. And I wanted to use my journalism skills in more of a independent way. But originally, According to Hip Hop started off as a trivia game, right? And then once we got on the social media, it became more of a media platform. And like I said, I started using those journalism skills to that, building the website. And then, you know, it just turned into a platform with over 1 million followers. And yeah, it turned into something where it was about the people. And we wanted to kind of expand upon that because a lot of media doesn't do the culture justice. And we figured that this would be an opportunity for people of the culture and the fans of the culture to actually dictate the narrative and kind of take in that narrative and be able to actually cover hip hop in the way that it needs to, and not from the outside in, but like from the inside out. I mean, you even see these disrespectful pieces from the New York Post, posting about, DMX in that situation where they posted an article about the properties that he lost while he's on his deathbed. And that's, those are the type of things that major media does. And we don't see those things happen to the Elvises of the world. And, we kind of just have to take in, hip hop culture on our own and be able to cover it in the way that we see fit, because other outlets aren't going to do it that justice.
Well, I agree with you. I tell me what you think. I think that there's a big difference between a black man covering the life of DMX versus mainstream media. I know that when I want to talk about DMX, I found out that he finally that he passed, and I was laying down and I didn't immediately get up to talk about it because I said, okay, how can I talk about his life in a way that is honest and authentic? I'm not here to sugarcoat things, but respects his humanity, right? Allows us to not see his life in black or white, but to see all the shades of gray, so we can just really appreciate him and understand him. Because a lot of people will think that because you struggle with drugs, you're just a bad person, but we can't sit here and pretend like drugs doesn't make people do bad things. We know that happens, right? So you have to acknowledge that, but we also know I don't know a single person anywhere that I've ever met who wasn't good to somebody, who didn't do, even the hardest killer gangster that you ever meet could have killed 100 people, but he loves his mama, or maybe he protected his daughter, so everybody has something good you can reference. Everybody has the bad, and we have all the stuff in between. And so with DMX, what do you think he stands in hip hop history? Like, how do you compare him to Tupac and Jay-Z and T.I. and the other, and Ice Cube, and the great artists that have existed through time? How does he fit in all that?
I think he was a game changer. I think that every now and then you have those people who come in and just change the tone of everything. I think when Rakim came in 87 and changed the whole flow of everything, the way it was going, where it was no longer the Run DMC flow. And then you had when Nas came in 94 and brought back that whole feeling of that when the game had, kind of gone more to the West Coast. I think the DMX was that for the late 90s, where everything had kind of gotten shiny suit. It was almost kind of like a running joke with, mainstream hip hop. And he brought some rawness to mainstream hip hop and kind of set the tone for 50 to do what he did with Get Rich or Die Trying. It was kind of a similar thing where the game had gotten really happy. Radio stuff was very bright. And then you bring this, this darkness and rawness back. And I think that that's where, he's always going to be remembered for. But I think that he hit people on a different level in a similar way that a Tupac and a Scarface does. I think people can listen to his music and really, really relate. And it's not about all the rapidy rap metaphors and, lyrical miracle stuff with him. I think he hits people on a different level.
Yeah. I didn't see him, I followed him, like everybody else, I'm the same age as him. So I literally, I followed him real close. I followed Tupac real close. And it's interesting, when you think about, let's say we name, 5 of the greatest artists. In fact, let's do that. Let's go ahead and grab DMX and put him in there. This is a special day in terms of commemorating him, and let's put him in there. Let's surround him with 4 artists that you think just had that kind of global impact, dead or alive, hip hop artists. Who would you kind of put in that conversation? I was talking about Pac. It's Pac. Okay. What? Give me some other names.
I would say, obviously Jay-Z's. What he's done in the game is just really, is really spellbounding as far as longevity and as far as his impact and skill wise, regardless of, what people may think of some of the moves that he's done, his career is it stands alone. I'd say him. I guess you would have to say Tupac, and I would say like on a ground level, I always compare Rakim to like a Wilt Chamberlain. Like he was so far ahead of everything that it's tough to compare him to anything. So he would have to be in that conversation as well. And you got a Nas. You even got a Kanye and what he's brought to the game, maybe not just so much lyrically, but how he made people feel. And I think that, I don't know, you kind of put for me at least, I kind of put certain artists in different groupings, and I think that DMX is more in the Ice Cube, Chuck D, Tupac, Scarface grouping because they made you feel things.
Okay.
Whereas I don't think that was always Jay-Z's approach, really. I think his approach was more conversational. I think Nas's approach was more poetic. I think DMX was trying to get you to feel what he was saying. And so, and those people, I mean, we've seen it in music in general, not just hip hop. Those people who do those things, their music ages a lot different than others. You know, the Marvin Gayes, you know, and I mean, Tupac is a huge one where it never was really about him being the most skilled rapper or whatever, but you got people who weren't even alive when he was doing what he was doing that could relate to him because he spoke about real life and life repeats itself. And I think DMX is one of those. And you could hear that pain from, I mean, I don't know when the first time you heard DMX, and I think the first time I might have heard him was either on that Locks, Money, Power, Respect, or LL's 4321. Either way, you could hear pain in that voice and you could tell that man was different.
Yeah, he really was unique, and I felt like DMX was he was just one of those guys. He was like an explosion, like just kind of in there and just took over everything. And you're right, it did kind of change. It's like he just almost like the way the Beatles knocked out the what was it, the era before what they called the bebop doo-wop era.
Doo-wop era, yeah.
Came along and just all that was gone. And so I went down. I was taking notes as you were talking. And by the way, everybody, I'm talking to Michael Dothard. He's the co-founder of AccordingToHipHop.com. Everybody should go check that out. And hit the thumbs up button. Take 1 second, everybody. If you haven't done it yet, please hit the thumbs up button. Okay, so I wrote down some names from the list that you made, and I added actually a name at the end, just out of respect for Biggie. You mentioned Jay-Z, Tupac, DMX, Rakim, Kanye West, Nas, Ice Cube, Chuck D, Tupac. Or I wrote Tupac twice. He probably should be in there.
Right.
Tupac, right? Tupac 2 times. Scarface and Biggie. Okay, so that's 10 artists. Now, what I see in this list, right, is you have guys that had different experiences, different outcomes. I would say at the top, you got Jay-Z and Ice Cube going on to become billionaires and or very wealthy, whatever amount of money they have. You then had the worst outcomes, right? Biggie, Pac, DMX. That ends in a tragic way. Kanye's a billionaire now. Scarface in the middle. And so the reason I say that is because it seems to me like the hip hop music industry has always been a really interesting place, very diverse. It can be this amazing place with extraordinary artistic talent where people live out their wildest dreams, or it can become this place where nightmares live, you know, where literally I remember just thinking, you know, I used to grow up thinking like it would be great to be a rap star, but the more I know more rappers, the more I say I would never want to be a rap star because you go places and people getting shot in the club and you rapping this gangster stuff and then get like real gangsters show up and gangster shit goes down. And I almost wonder, you know, it seems like all of this that happened, I don't really think black people are the ones who really created this. I don't think we intended for hip hop to become that, right? No. What do you think? And just as an expert on hip hop, how do you feel about the fact that some stuff just gets taken to the left? You know, you every couple of weeks you hear about a rapper getting shot. How does that make you feel?
I mean, I think it's exploitation. Again, I think a lot of that starts with, you know, media depictions. And when it comes to media, again, we don't really run the media that is actually depicting these things, right? I mean, obviously it's in the music, but who's putting that money behind the music and who's distributing this on the high level? Because it's not like there hasn't been positive hip hop records out there that were, you know, that were banging records, like Fight the Power was banging. Like, not to mention, you know, the stuff that, you know, Common and these guys were doing from a certain perspective was banging music, but that wasn't where all the focus and the money and the media attention was put behind. I mean, I think Tupac, again, not to go back to him, he's a great example of that. He was one of those people that gave us that level of balance. But when you look at it a generation later, the person that they actually exploited, or the part of Tupac that they exploited, was the one that was, you know, the rah-rah and, you know, West Side, whatever. It wasn't the keep your head up Pac, because that keep your head up Pac wasn't really even on the top of the game like that. I think Dear Mama, again, when Me Against the World came out, him getting locked up, that was used. And, you know, a lot of these things are media depictions. And I mean, I think Interscope does they're one of the big people behind some of those things. I mean, you got a murder trial for Snoop. You got 50 getting shot 9 times. You got, you know, Pac coming out of jail. And they're able to use some of these things, and it has become more media and media attention around those things outside of the actual music itself. And like you said, it becomes one of those things where the people around really start living that. And even with the East Coast, West Coast not even being a real thing, that was a vibe cover that, you know, they put out there to sell magazines, and then it became some real violence. And those are media depictions. I think if things could be kind of steered in a more organic way and, you know, better communication and ran by people who actually care about the culture and people in the culture, I think that some of those things can be driven in a different path and, you know, get away from those things.
Well, you know, to tell you, what I see is white supremacy. Well, you know, white supremacy. I mean, it's white supremacy because these media outlets are not owned by Black people.
They're not.
But yet, because we view them as superior, we view a certain magazine as like, oh, I'm on the cover of that magazine, right? We give them a supreme, superior, you know, positioning in our mind, right? So in order to get on the cover of these magazines, people are kind of going along with whatever's there or whatever narrative they create out of, you know, just out of thin air. They create that, and then we get in line with that, right? Like you said, the East Coast West Coast thing wasn't even a thing until they decided in the magazine it was a thing, and then people really started internalizing that, you know. And I think that that's a real fascinating thing to say, man, because the thing was, I think about if you go back to another artist that was talented and emotional and complex named Tupac. I remember one time I was on Stephen A. Smith used to have this show called Quite Frankly with Stephen A. Smith. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah, you a brother. So bro, it was like like the Oprah Winfrey show for Black men. I felt like it was. And I was on that show one time with Method Man. And Method Man, who's a really smart guy, by the way, we had a great conversation. He, you know, I met a lot of different people, but he was a guy where he actually was responsive and thoughtful and intelligent. And one time we started talking about Tupac. Tupac came up, and he got real emotional, almost to the point of pissed off. And basically what he said was, he said that when you know, because what it is, everybody says, well, why would you get into that stuff? Why would you do this? Why would you do that? He said, because when you're at the top, everybody's coming at you. Everybody's coming at you with everything all the time, and you're just dealing with so much chaos. And I thought about that ever since. That happened like over 12 years ago, but I thought about it ever since, because that's true. You know, when you are in that limelight and people want that limelight, like I want to be the man, I want to be out there. But it almost seems to me, and you hear it in the music, right? You hear with 50 Cent when he's talking about many men wish death upon me. That doesn't seem, it almost seems like you achieve heaven. Like you think you've accomplished all these great things, but really you're kind of in a new type of hell. What are your thoughts on what I just said?
I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that's totally correct. And then these guys are put in a position where the media is coming at them too. And they're putting these labels on them. It's like watching the evening news. And the evening news depicts a certain group of people in a certain way. Then anytime anyone sees these people or that group of people in public, then they're going to, you know, they're going to interact with them in that same way. And these artists are dealing with that on a high level, where they got people who have these perceptions of them around them and who might approach them in an aggressive way or not. You just don't know. Like, I can't imagine what they're going through at the height of what they're doing. I remember when I was in radio, this is back when 50 came out. I was like an intern and I was young. And basically we were in the basement, and the radio station was actually on the 10th floor. But anyway, when 50 came in the building, he had like all kind of security. He had everything. You would think the president was in the building. They wouldn't even let people on the elevator, you know? And it's that kind of energy that is being created, and it turns into something else. It's like, I don't know if the industry is trying to emulate what the streets, you know, are what is said of being the streets, or what's in the music, but they're trying to actually magnify this persona on a huge industry public level. And it becomes, it doesn't have a great ending. I mean,
that's the danger, right? When you think about it, right? A lot of artists, you get a sense that they make that when they're branded almost like superheroes, like, or even worse, cartoon characters in some cases, right? Like something that is just not human anymore, right? And if you've been projected to the whole world as superhuman, that kind of sucks because everybody starts to think you're superhuman, but we know that ain't true. You are very human, and I would imagine that when you get to that point, so you're meeting groupies that think you're superhuman. You're meeting all these dudes that think you're the hardest gangster of all time. What's your boy Idris Elba said when he played Stringer Bell in The Wire? He said real dope dealers would sit down and ask him for business advice. And he was like, I don't know how to, I don't know nothing about your business. That's what I play on TV. And that it takes a lot to kind of deal with that, to kind of balance that.
People think it's real life.
Yeah. Like people think. Yeah. So what do you think about that? I mean, and I think some of it. Don't get me wrong. Everybody does it, right? Black, white, Asian, all that. But I feel like Black people, we do it a little bit more. Like I think that we will hear your music and we'll look at your persona and think that's really you. And that's got to be a terrible place for the artist to be in because they're thinking, man, if I take off my cape and show myself as a real flawed human being, then people won't get that. Like I'm going to lose everything I have. What do you think about that?
But is that why like rappers have stage names in the first place? Like they can't even be themselves. Like you can't even go by first name, last name. It's the whole persona, a character that you never really, turn off in a sense. Because at the end of the day, like you said, people grow. Everybody's a regular person. But when people just see you for a song that you made back in like 1998 in 2021, that's unfair, and nobody can live up to that.
You really can't, it's I just think about that. I just think about and that's the thing about public branding is and everybody out here who's trying to do whatever you're trying to do, if you're trying to brand yourself, be careful about how you brand yourself. Because I go through that, when like I will meet people that will have a completely different interpretation of me than what I actually am as a person. And I'll be like, where did you get that from? Like let me just break that whole notion up right now. Like, because I met a lady one time who came and did some stuff at the house, and she went and told her friends, because her friend told me what she said. She said, yeah, Dr. Boyce is actually really nice. And I was thinking, well, why wouldn't she think I'm nice? But maybe that made me reflect on, okay, what image am I giving? What perception am I giving? I don't want you to think I'm perfect. I don't want you to think I'm always a bastard. I don't want you to think I'm always the nice guy. It's just human, right? And I think that with artists, I really hope that we can give them space to be human, and to remember that this is not that these are portrayals. Like for example, I think when the whole thing happened with Rick Ross and he was 50 Cent called him Officer Rick and was kind of trolling him over his background and saying this is all fake, this ain't pretend. I almost feel like Rick Ross kind of did something good for the industry because he still had a great career. By saying, yeah, I'm pretending. Of course I'm pretending, but I'm going to keep on rapping in this pretend world and you're going to like it because it's good music. I almost feel like that was a kind of progress for hip hop. I mean, what do you think?
So too. I mean, because I think at that point you kind of look at it as a job, right? And I know that, we come from that whole era of keep it real. And at the end of the day, people's job at that point, you're going to the studio, you're going on tour. You don't have time to do any of those things that people think you're doing in the music. I think one of the real progress stories for real was Kanye West. He came into the game. I think he kind of snuck into the game, honestly. They didn't think he was going to make it as an artist, but he came in being completely honest, came in with no street credibility or didn't need anything like that. Went with his first name, last name. He dressed how he wanted to dress, and he basically put it all out there for you like, this is me. This is college dropout. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't one of those things like I dabbled in the streets, because there was a point where it was like you couldn't make it in hip hop if you didn't have some level of street credibility, no matter, at least on a mainstream level. Obviously, you had, the conscious side of things, but he was one of the biggest in the game and didn't have to play that game. And I think that was huge progress. I think he's the reason that we do have the J. Coles and Drakes and even the guys that are, coming even after that, where it's like, I went to college a couple years or I graduated from college and I could still be a hip hop artist if I want to be. Before Kanye, I don't really think we had a real example of that. People used to try to hide those things. They would try to hide the fact that they were educated.
Yep. Now let me ask you this: are you? Oh, I know you're younger than I am, but do you remember what happened to Vanilla Ice when they found out that he was really Robbie Van Winkle from the suburbs?
I vaguely remember the Vanilla Ice stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't see how anybody thought anything different. That's the funny part. Like, what did people think?
Well, you know what people thought? They really thought I guess they really thought because he was a rapper, he was like a white boy from the streets and had lived this street life. And I guess like it was weird. It was like once they found out that he was Robbie Van Winkle from the suburbs, his whole career went straight down. He produced some great music after that, but nobody listened to it. and I think that's like the origin of the whole like keeping it real nonsense that happened. Because the thing about keeping it real, man, is I just really think people gotta sort of think that through. Like some situations you gotta keep it real. Like when it comes to like your blackness and protecting your kids and living your life, you gotta keep those things real. But when it comes to like some of that street stuff, man, like most of the time what I've seen keeping it real, it really goes wrong. When I think about hip hop keeping it real, I think about Suge Knight, who's locked up for God knows how many years. I think about Tupac. Tupac kept it extra real, and that didn't quite work out. And I think that that really keeping it real could be reshaped to mean just be yourself, man.
Yeah.
Love yourself, love who you are. You ain't perfect. You ain't got to be Superman all the time, but you can be a great man. If you do your best and you I keep it real. I love the hell out of my black woman. That's me keeping it real. I protect my kids. That's keeping it real. I want to be intelligent. That's me keeping it real. I believe I stand for on what I believe in. That's keeping it real. And I think hip hop is going in that direction, at least within a certain demographic. What do you think? I mean, but then again, am I wrong? Or because I watch different artists from the young guys that are out now. Like I don't watch the 20-year-olds. I'm looking at E40 and T.I. and I think him and Joyner Lucas and T.I. They had that song, I Stand on That, right? Which I identified with. I was like, okay, that's right. Yeah, stand on that, right? And it almost seems like that's a reflection of that, saying I keep it real by really knowing what it means to be a man, knowing what it means to stand for what I believe in. But do you think that is just the natural maturity of a certain segment of the hip hop industry, or do you think that that's happening in hip hop across the board?
I think that's a segment. I think that hip hop is way wider range than it's ever been because you have people in their 50s rapping and you got people in their teens rapping and they're all rapping to different segments of the audience. I don't think that keep it real necessarily has to mean keep it street. I do think that, just being honest with yourself and who you are, I think that has kind of become the norm. They know the people who dabbled in whatever, and the people who didn't. And they're all accepted. And again, I think that's one of the walls that Kanye broke down, where it's like everybody can kind of be accepted for who they are in the culture and where they actually fit. But yeah, I do think hip hop is in a great place in that sense. But I do think that it's a lot of raw energy, and that's why people feel like I can't make a raw song without talking about being in the streets or someone. But you can make a raw song that's politically charged, or if you don't even feel that way, you can make raw songs about, how your day went. I mean, there's different ways to do it. And that's the great thing about hip hop. It's just about who can be, creative in what they're doing. I think it was Lil Yachty that said in a recent interview, it's like the easiest thing in hip hop to do is be hard. It's, it's more difficult to go out there and, be yourself and still go out there and be able to, galvanize some sort of audience. And he does that well too. I'm not a huge fan of what, he does like that. I don't listen to him like that. I listen to a few things, but I do respect the fact that he comes with what's real to him. And he obviously connects to an audience doing that. And I think that's great. I think that's where hip hop's at right now.
Well, that's true. He's right. Being hard and playing a character, that is the easy route. What's really hard is to be vulnerable. The way to show your toughness is to be honest and to be authentic in terms of who you are. Being vulnerable is very hard. Usually people that are extra hard all the time, it's because they're soft on the inside. Like they don't want you to get in there because there's too much pain with that. And so that vulnerability, I think, is that's the best way to be true to yourself. And so, everybody, I want you to know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to Michael Dothard. He is the co-founder of accordingtohiphop.com. There's the URL on the screen, and he's a hip hopologist. He knows his way around hip hop. And I'm actually going to talk to my other homeboy, Vigilante, out of Kansas City, who's also another fellow hip hopologist. And we're talking about not just DMX, but really talking about hip hop as a whole. And also, just because everybody in here is black, if you could do me a favor, one, hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe button. Do that right now, please. And also, if you want to learn how to invest or get access to our Black agenda that we put together, we got a link to Ice Cube's Contract of Black America. Ice Cube is doing great work for the world. He's using the power of hip hop to transform the world in a positive way. There's a link to his Contract of Black America, as well as a lot of other things, a lot of resources for your family, like how to invest in the stock market, stuff like that, at the allblackagenda.com. We're taking over this thing. The agenda is ours. We're going to do it. And in fact, actually, Ice Cube's going to come back soon because we got a surprise for y'all that we've been talking about for a couple months. So let me ask you this, man. So Michael Dothard from According to Hip Hop, you told me that you had like a new product out. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, what we ended up doing, since 2020 was an epic year for everybody, and it was a very different year, and it was a game-changing and shifting year. We went ahead and made a hip-hop yearbook because, media, it just goes so fast, right? You lose, whatever trending topic happened like a month ago. We don't even remember Gorilla Glue Girl like that now. So what we did, since we have a following of nearly 1 million, we went back and analyzed the whole year because there was a lot of music that came out in 2020. And we broke up each section of every topic that people really spoke about and really talked about from January to the end of December. And we went ahead and commemorized it in one physical form. So we went ahead and put this in one hip hop yearbook. And we're starting the hip hop yearbook with 2020 because, again, like I told you, I think it's really important for us to actually grab a hold of our own history and be able to document it as it goes. Because, we've seen how people will try to rewrite history, go through and delete things digitally. So we went ahead and put 2020 in a physical book. I don't know if you can see this here, but, everything that happened hip hop wise. Let me get in there. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, everything that happened in the culture.
Let me see that. Put it up there again. I want to see it again.
Yeah, so this is the cover, man. And
nice.
Yeah, so we went through and covered the culture from end to end, man. And the people that we lost, different movements, the albums that came out, the verses is in there, obviously. And it's about 200 pages where we're able to commemorate the whole year in a physical form and document a real monumental year in not only the world, but in hip hop. And a lot of great music that came out last year. And for people who needed a recap on the year or who just want to, be a historian of the culture in that way, you'll be able to have this in physical form. And yeah, so that's what we went ahead and did. And we put it out about a month ago because we really worked diligently to make sure that we included everything that happened in 2020. And it's available on Amazon, actually. So just go on to Amazon, put in According to Hip Hop, the number 2, go to the book section, and it'll be right there. So, people are able to order it and pretty much get it immediately. If you got Amazon Prime, you can get it tomorrow. But yeah, so we thought that was very important. And we're going to do this on an annual basis to make sure that our history isn't rewritten by anyone outside of us. So, we felt like we wanted to take advantage of the opportunity that we do have, a following like this who is basically writing the history of hip hop, with as it's going. And we want to document it in that way where it's not just some people in the offices telling us what happened in hip hop in 2020.
Yeah, well, I think that's important. You got to write your own story. If you don't write your own story, somebody else will. Right. So when we were talking about DMX, and in fact, it's funny because you got places like Harvard University, having hip hop studies classes and this other stuff. And something about that just rubs me the wrong way. I'm sure that they find great black people to teach those classes, but I'm not a fan because one of the things about hip hop that I love the most is hip hop, for the most part, did not fall to the pressure of being politically correct all the time. You know, like they didn't have to necessarily go along with whatever stupid little thing white people decided that we were supposed to do, you know, or whatever. And I feel like in a university setting, they're nothing but bastions of the political correctness police, you know, censorship and all this other stuff. And I don't think that works well with hip hop. I think hip hop is one of the greatest artistic expressions in the history of mankind. I think that you think about DMX, like I think there's a reason why DMX was driven to stray dogs into hip hop. You know, I did my armchair analysis. I said I feel like he felt like the stray dogs, the unloved, abandoned dogs felt because he was abandoned in his own life. And then also I think hip hop was beautiful because hip hop allowed him to express the pain that a black man might feel when he's been a victim of tremendous amounts of abuse. You know, when you are kind of, just kind of going through life and you're fighting all the time. I mean, part of you is sad, the other part of you is pissed off, and you hear DMX. That's what you heard with DMX, like, he's barking, but he's like sad and he's crying on the inside. Yeah. You felt that, and I think that's what made him so impactful. And by the way, everybody, Michael gave me the link to the yearbook, and I'm gonna put this actually in the chat so everybody can have it if you want to go check out the hip hop yearbook. So let's go. We can go and close out, man. I know you got a lot of things going on in your life and stuff like that. But so tell me, what are your final thoughts? If we want to remember DMX, I mean, you are our resident hip hop historian right now. This is better than Harvard University. You are in the house of intelligent black people. So we're more important than Harvard. How do we remember DMX? How do we remember him in an honest way, but also remember him in a way that reflects his humanity and his impact and what he did, what he was as an artist and human being? Go ahead.
I think we need to respect his voice and his, his music and everything that he brought to the world musically. I think everything that he is about is in his music, his struggles, his high points, low points, everybody struggles, but, at different levels. And I think that we do need to do a better job of making sure that we uphold our heroes and our artists. I would say, heroes, or if you consider people heroes or not, that's, depending on you. But I think that other cultures do a very good job of upholding people who have had impact in their culture. And I think that to focus on the low points is not a positive thing for us to do in our culture. I think we need to do a better job of making sure that we remember people for the reason why we know them in the first place.
Right on. Well, and I agree. I think that on one, part of it, when it comes to something like drugs, part of it is part of the story, right? And because when you are on top and you aren't there anymore, people are gonna say, "Well, what happened?" So there's a conversation to be had. But I agree with you though that there should be room for an artist just to be an artist without us feeling the need to consistently scrutinize their personal life.
I watched that. I went to the movie theater and saw that movie that they did about Queen, and they made it PG-13, and clearly they did that to, they kept out all the drug use. I mean, they showed when Freddie Mercury was struggling, but they didn't really go into detail, and you couldn't even see any drugs on there. And that was intentional. They wanted to make sure that it was more about the music and about what they did as a group musically, and not let, that part of their career overshadow what they were there for. They do a good job of that. And it seems like when it comes to, black artists, it's a lot of dwelling on those things.
There you go.
Unfortunately.
Well, we need people like you because we need the truth tellers in our community that are going to make sure our legacy is respected the way it should be. And I think it is important, when you talk about the black man, my God, everybody, the first thing people point out about black men tends to be the negative. And so in order for us to change that, we can't just beg them to go change it. That's not what a man does. You don't go begging, you just fix it. Right. So for us, let's fix it. Let's support hip hop historians like Michael Dothard. Everybody, I'm going to put that in the chat one more time. I'm going to put a link where you can go directly to take a look at at his yearbook. He put a lot of time into it. He's very serious about what he does. And I invited the brother on because I've seen him doing his work for years. And I watched when, according to hip hop, had built up to this big, gigantic following. And then Facebook comes in and just kills it and killed the whole page those assholes, and then but you guys you just rebuilt, man. You rebuilt.
Yeah.
I love it because that's what Black builders do. That's what you do when you talk about do for self and building and all that. That's what you do. In Vietnam, they were confused how the Viet Cong, they dropped more bombs on the Viet Cong than all the bombs dropped by all the countries combined in World War II. Like they literally bombed the shit out of them. And 30 years later, they asked the Viet Cong soldiers, they said, how is it that every time we kept bombing you, you kept fighting? And every time we blow up a bridge, the bridge would be built back up 3 days later. And they said we had a saying. And the saying was, if they blow it up, we rebuild. If they blow it up again, we rebuild again.
Yeah. And
I think that's important, whether you're talking about building the according to hip hop platform or building Black Wall Street. According to hip hop is your version of Black Wall Street. Your contribution to that. That's what we must do. So everybody in here, so we can walk away better people, type the word build in the chat. Mike, I'll let you get the last word, man. Sound like you got
to piggyback off of that, man. Like, again, even at this point, even though we're nearly at 1 million followers on Facebook, Facebook still tries to shadow ban. So like you said, you continue to rebuild, diversify. We're building up our YouTube, obviously. We went back to the whole trivia aspect because we do have we're selling the individual trivia games too.
Nice.
Yeah. So we got those, but we're actually working on a live trivia game show as well. So talking to a few different broadcasters, distributors in that way. So we could just keep diversifying what we're doing and making sure we're on all platforms and all senses of the word. And, like you said, continue to rebuild and continue to build where, okay, you take out the Facebook page, fine. We still got this game show over here. We still got the yearbooks in people's houses. And yeah, you can't stop it.
There you go. Can't stop, won't stop.
Right.
There you go. All right, everybody. By the way, the Black Boss channel, that's our platform for Black men. We got brothers on it. They'll talk about hip hop, talk about sports, talk about stocks, talk about relationships, everything. So subscribe to the Black Boss channel. I think you guys will like it. It's one of the few places where Black men get to be honest and intelligent Black men too. And so go subscribe, and I'll invite Michael on there, man. If you got anything you want to say on that platform, this is an invitation to you too.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because
you having me.
I think as Black men, we got to speak up, stand up, and not apologize for nothing. So I ain't apologizing to nobody for anything. And so thank you very much, man. It was great to see you, brother. Everybody give my brother Michael Dothard from According to Hip Hop a digital round of applause. If you haven't done it yet, there's his website and everything else. So everybody go check it out. Go support. Go check out those flashcards and hit the thumbs up button on your way out. If you could, please hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button. And we are out of here. So everybody have a good day. We'll see you soon. Love you. Peace.
Appreciate it.